by looking at images and telling a story of the uses of certain implements. For instance, you could have the actual tools as you're telling a story about the tanning of hides. This would be a good area that you'd be able to relay the importance of animal hides being used for clothing, for instance. Because if you're telling children, you know, you're slaying the animal and then taking their hide, they might think it's not nice. But if they see what the different types of clothing that are made, the different type of tools that the animal provided, it didn't go to waste. None of it was thrown away. I'm Mona Jules. I'm originally from Sketcheston, but I now live up in the Seamouth territory up in the North Thompson. Storytelling is a way of teaching in the Secwepemc language. It was in the past and it still is, even though you may get the message slower. It's still a way of picking up the language at a broader base right away. Whereas, you know, you're learning the vocabulary and then a few sentences. In storytelling, it gives you the whole scope of the information about various things. The problem with many of our younger people, there's a wall there that we need to tear down so that they can begin to speak it. They can understand it fully, but they will not speak it. And that wall has to come down somehow so that they can, you know, begin speaking the language. Yes, storytelling was very special. They would tell about anything that they thought would be interesting to the people. They also carried out special council meetings at every gathering. They would have surrounding communities as well as Secwepemc people. And they would come in their best clothes when they went to gatherings. I remember as a child, we would, you know, shine up our shoes till they were very shiny. We would make sure, you know, if we had a white blouse, it was very white. And you could imagine that that type of care was also taken in previous years. People would come in their best buckskin jackets. When I see the adorned outfit here, there was an elder from Enderby who told me that this outfit here would be for inaugurating a chief or council, because the white animals on the side there was used to decorate somebody who was elected as chief or council, someone who was very special. This would be going to a celebration, a winter dance or a special occasion celebration. They had powwows, but they weren't called powwows. They were called Secwepemc, the winter celebrations. The simple dress would be used for everyday wear. It wouldn't have fringe, wouldn't have any bells or decorations on it. They were worn for every day. Something with fringe and a lot of painting and so on would be used at a gathering they called splug. As I was growing up, the jackets like this were still used by all the men, the jacket in the corner. They all wore the fringe jackets with the horses embroidered in the back, and gloves like that. At special occasions they would wear them. My grandmother had a pair of gloves made for my grandfather that were like that, and he didn't wear them very often. So they were kept for special occasions. Moccasins were for every day. We wore moccasins all the time. But the rest of the dress was I never saw buckskin dress as I was growing up, only the moccasins. A lot of the artifacts were banned, and I believe a lot of the fear was still there right up until the 50s and 60s. It wasn't until the 70s before all the dress and the culture and traditions started emerging again. Storytelling, to me, brings back the warm atmosphere that I felt around my grandparents, the glow that I felt as I sat and listened to them telling the stories, and just visualizing what they were telling me. I would sit there with a ready smile while my cousins laughed and screamed at the hilarity of the stories. So those things I remember, it still echoes in my mind when I think back to the stories, the living stories that we had as I grew up. My grandmothers taught me storytelling. I had two main grandmothers. One taught me the language, and the other one taught storytelling to all her grandchildren. And storytelling was quite important. It's like people watching television now. In the evenings, we would all head to my grandmother Dorothy's place, and she'd have a blanket on the floor. We'd all sit around in a circle and listen to her stories about Coyote and Fox, and how she brought the characters to life by making the sounds, and just with an animated voice. She made storytelling so much fun. And because we knew the language quite well, we were able to sit and listen for hours. We'd stay there till 1 in the morning from early evening.
When Hawaii Saltkin, Land Boopsman, is to be Trump and Alia Peen, as Wakum and Alia, as Unwet, White, Spectaculum, as Aknima and Sienna to the Wield, Stramelt, as Jokum Stas, Hawaii, those Els, Hawaii, those Haims, as good Haims, what Hannah's is Aquas, and it is a Hulu. Laat Boopsman, is Kakneenman, is the Amt na Alia, who eats and walking, thought when hand was Lahachia one was Pedatkulam when Yui Enos Kadaks and Smith and judged.
A story about how the Secwepemc people used to move up into the mountains in the spring, early spring. They would move up and live in their wigwams that they would build from the bulrushes and that for covering. They would weave bulrushes and make their teepees, cover their teepees with that and live out there by the lakes. And it tells about the children running and playing on the mountains and the hillsides, swimming in the lakes, chasing rabbits and butterflies, just playing. And they never stopped playing all summer, aside from helping their grandmothers and their grandfathers and their mothers with chores and picking and so on. They had a lot of fun too. They swam on the lakes, they went fishing. And even on moonlit nights when the stars were out by the millions, they would play out on the hillsides in the moonlight. So this one little boy, he was a very grouchy little kid. He didn't like to listen to his parents to go home to sleep. He just wanted to be with the big kids out there running around and playing all evening. And so his mother told him, I'm going to sit you outside until you behave, and then I'll let you come in. So he started fussing and screaming. She put him outside the teepee door, and a few minutes later she didn't hear him anymore, so she went to bring him back in. And he was gone. The big owl had swooped down and packed him off. And the big owl used to do that if it didn't find any rabbits or cats in the village. It would pack off the children and raised him as its own. So that's what that story's about. The big owl stole this little boy and raised that little boy. So after the little boy disappeared, his parents, grandparents, and families of the community members all got together and searched for him for months. They never found him. Years went by, and the mother grew old, and she was walking with a cane. And she went to a Secwepemc gathering, and as she sat drumming by a fire, and she watched the dancers going around in a big circle, she saw a familiar figure going by, and she thought this young man looked familiar, but she couldn't place him. And he had this owl head on his head for a hat, and he was holding the wings of the big owl as he swooped and danced around the fire. So after a while, she couldn't remember who he was. So she went up to him with her cane and her blanket on her shoulder. And she asked him, where are you from? And what is your name? And he introduced himself, and he said that the owl had raised him. He was stolen from that village. And as the owl was dying, the owl told him, you go back to your people. They're going to have a gathering soon. Go back there. And when you enter their powwow, you could use my wings, and I'll give you this. You could make yourself an owl hat. And so he did. He went back to his village, and the old lady was very happy to see him again. She was so happy. She gave him a warm hug, and she put her drum down, took her blanket on, and she began to dance around with her cane. She joined the circle of dancers.